So moving on, we're at 10:40. I'm going to throw over to Jim and Don from Event Safety Alliance over there in the United States. I first met them in 2016 when I went to a LDI trade show. They made me feel very welcome, and I learned a lot about that organization at that point in time, and we felt that it was important to share their knowledge and what they're also learning through these times that we're living through with all of you. So good morning from us, and I'll pass over to you gentlemen now, and we'll sit here and capture any questions and yeah, talk to everyone soon. Thank you.
Morena, Vicky. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very, very excited to be with you today from the other side of the world. Of course, over here, it's about 38 C. So the temperature outside is quite a bit different, I suspect, than you're experiencing right now. So if you hear the noise in the background, that's our my electric fan working. It's a little bit different than the fans you may be used to. However, they're needed here, just like they are there, I'm sure. So my name is Don Cooper, and joining me is Jim Digby, who is the president of the Event Safety Alliance. I'm the executive director, and I thought I just might take a moment to give you a little bit of background about what the Event Safety Alliance is. We're a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to promoting life safety first throughout all the phases of event production and execution. We strive to eliminate the knowledge barrier that often contributes to unsafe conditions and behaviors through the promotion of teaching of good practices and the development of training and planning resources. We do this in many, many, many different ways. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit, but our focus is really on education and training and bringing people up to speed to keep the industry safe. I am not a production professional. My background is in public safety. I actually serve now as essentially a city manager. So I manage a small city. So COVID has made me busier as much as our industry has slowed down. I've had a lot of opportunity to learn some wonderful things over the last year, but also seen some of my best friends and colleagues and family just devastated by the last year of lack of work. So the ESA has done a few things to try to help and hopefully carry us through this really challenging time. We do a number of things. We have a group that teaches or puts together guidance or standards, ANSI standards basically, to, that's American National Standards, to develop guidelines and basic principles for the industry itself. We also do training that meets the standards of the US Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA training, which is very good basic fundamental training for not only individuals, but also supervisors or leaders in both general industry and construction. And we have a bit of both in our industry here. We also have the online event safety access training, ESAT, which I think Vicky mentioned, she went through some years ago. Now it's all online, so ESAT can be available. It's kind of a basic training, core training for everybody in the industry. And we hope that you might avail yourself of it. And we're actually generating sponsors now who will provide it for free, for no cost. So we're looking forward to being able to offer that to everyone in the world. We also have a recently developed Pathogen Prepared Professional program, which basically has evolved out of the COVID situation. And so we call it PPP, and you can sign up for it on our website. And it basically teaches how we in the industry can keep ourselves safe in a number of ways now with the pathogens, as well as the mechanics and other things that we're more used to. We do an annual weather summit that has been virtual for the last couple of years. We have an event safety summit, which is our big kind of meeting for the year that's done in the eastern part of the US in Lidditz. It's a wonderful opportunity for networking, and we're really hoping that even though you might be far away, that you might join us this year, as we, for the second year in a row, will have parts of it, if not most of it or all of it, virtually available. We also do crowd safety symposiums. We work closely with the UK Crowd Management Association, and we're developing with them a global crowd managers association so that we all can participate. And we do have some participants in New Zealand as well as Australia and many other parts of the world that are helping us kind of focus in on crowd management and the importance of it. Of course, we have the event safety guide, which I have a copy of it back here in the library. The event safety guide is kind of our basic thing book that was written in about 2014. From it, we're taking each chapter and trying to turn it into an ANSI standard. So the guidance that we're getting from, with the help of ESTA in our event safety group is basically carrying this forward so that we can improve and continue to make it better. The last thing I'll mention is the ESA is sensitive to the situation in our industry and is very, well, we've changed our membership pricing and what we offer in the interest of trying to help everybody that needs it. And there's a lot of need right now, as I'm sure Jim will mention here in a moment. We have a Reemerge Ready membership program that basically for very little money incorporates a lot of things that many in the industry need these days. And that includes everything from individual membership to the ESA, complimentary access to a health medical program that we do for US citizens. We have our ESAT training as part of that. There's registration to our online PPP program, the Pathogen Prepared Professional Training. We give huge discounts, minimum of 30% on ESA produced in-person events like our safety symposium. The access to exclusive like the Reemerge Ready in-person and online seminars. And we're actually doing some things this summer in Nashville in the United States that I'm going to leave up to Jim Digby to describe that has to do with our mental health. Jim, you want to continue?
Thanks, Don. I'll start with an introduction. My name is Jim Digby. I am a nearly 4-decade event and entertainment professional. Most of that time was spent leading touring artists and their teams around the world as production manager, production director, tour manager, and the like. The Event Safety Alliance's formation came on the heels of the unfortunate stage collapse in Indiana in 2011, when a storm took a stage down and killed 7 people and wounded 55 others. That was the seminal moment that inspired the creation of the Event Safety Alliance. And unlike the UK version of the Purple Guide, we wrote our guidance to try to find an expanded viewpoint. You know, our early principal tenet was, you know, gravity is the same everywhere, and why shouldn't these best practices or reasonable practices for event production be considered across the globe? We thought it would be handy if we all had a playbook that was the same or similar, state to state, region to region, country to country, of course, with the minor nuances of change that might be seen from different authorities having jurisdiction. I originally formed under the stage collapse. Of course, the next 10 years or 8 years, we've seen quite a bit more occur. We've seen this Pulse nightclub shooting that just had a memorial of some sort. I can't remember how many years it was. But people needlessly wounded, killed there. We saw the Bataclan incident. We saw the Manchester incident. We saw the Las Vegas incident. And in each instance, the Event Safety Alliance grew its subject matter expert base and attempted to cull from those moments in time learnings that we could pass on to the industry. We've been fortunate to found affiliates in multiple other countries as well, including South Korea. In fact, in South Korea, they've reprinted the guide in Korean. And of course, New Zealand is next on the list. And we think that Vicky and Kathy Nosley and Kerry Caldwell probably should found the New Zealand branch affiliate. You know, so now we cut to today, and we cut to, you know, early winter 2020 or early spring 2020, and COVID hits, and suddenly our entire industry shuts down. And this is something the likes of which we really haven't seen before. You know, the entertainment sector typically is always alive and thrives when the world is in desperate times. You know, you'll recall that the musicians played when the Titanic sank. But in this instance, that was not the case. We lost our industry, we lost our livelihood, and for many of us, we lost our identity. You know, we identify ourselves with the role we play in the entertainment space, in some instances more so than we identify ourselves as wife or father or husband or uncle or aunt. And we very early on recognized that this kind of loss of identity as well as livelihood was going to have a significant impact on the mental stability, mental resilience of our workforce, and went to work as early as we could, examining that, in addition to examining how we could reopen. As early as May last year, the ESA produced some 30 pages of reopening guidance. Not that we were suggesting that folks should reopen, but we wanted to make sure that should folks decide to reopen in the middle of COVID, they did so with as many safety measures in place as possible. That guidance was revisited again in November and aligned with the Centers for Disease Control here in the US and the World Health Organization. And then again, just recently, it was aligned into a checklist alongside working with the CDC and the NEVA and NITO and these great organizations that have popped up since the COVID pandemic destructed our industry the way that it did. You know, we found that while some politicians may say that, you know, we're an unnecessary existence, the entertainment space, we know that we represent the soul of our nation, and each nation's own welfare is brought on by being able to celebrate and be in one place together. So we've now taken a stronger focus towards mental health. The Behind the Scenes Foundation has delivered, has taken the mental health wellness training, mental health first aider, I believe it's called, which came out of Australia, and they've adapted it to the entertainment specific training. And we're helping, the Event Safety Alliance is helping to promote that the Behind the Scenes Foundation mental health first aid training. We recognize that many in our workforce will be coming out of COVID uncertain about what tomorrow brings. And we also recognize that the old way of doing business, which may have been a bit heavy-handed with respect to mental health, and you know, the idea that, hey, just get up, the show has to go on, I'm not worried about how you feel right now. All of these old ways need to evolve into a new place. So we're doing everything we can to promote the mental health first aid training as a backstop for when we spot those kinds of things on the workplace, as well as promoting other programs which are preventative in their nature and hopefully get us to a place where we don't need the backstop as much. Here in the US, we do a lot of promotion of CPR and first aid training being requisite, and the crews, which is good. But we think the mental health situation is going to be more rampant, at least in the early days as we come back to work, than the heart attack concerns that drive CPR training. So with a particular focus to our community mental health, that's where we're currently steering the ship. And we have this pathogen prepared professional training that Don talked about. The intent there was that we've seen here in the States lots of this COVID compliance officer training, which is good, necessary to some extent. It gets the insurers believing that the sets are being handled safely. But we took the longer view that pathogens are here to stay, and that this pathogen disruption is something we're going to see more frequently. So what can we do to build a more resilient workplace? What can we do to train more resilient, more awareness into our teams, our staff, our crews, so that we're applying as little pathogen concerns into the workplace as we possibly can. That's the intent of the PPP training. And as Don said, also the event safety access training is basic safety training. We think everybody should have that. And it's currently being included in membership with the ESA. Don?
I just want to emphasize a couple points you made. The event safety access training, ESAT training, is really intended to be so basic that we'd like to see everyone have it before you even come on site to work in any type. So I hope you'll consider that the way we intended it to be used. The PPP program is very new, and although COVID was its inspiration, it is not just about the COVID pandemic. It's about all pathogens. It's about reminding us, just like in first aid, that you wash a wound. In PPP training, we teach that you should wash your hands probably more often than we do, particularly with some of the work that we do. We often overlook that, thinking it's not all that important. It is. And there are more very basic type of pathogen prevention type concepts available in that PPP program. So I hope everyone might get an opportunity to look it over and take it and maybe pass it on. These programs come from the heart of a nonprofit that is interested only in improving the safety of the entire industry, nothing else. There's no monetary goal. There's nothing here but industry professionals trying to keep ourselves safe so that, frankly, government doesn't step in. Jim mentioned 2011, the stage collapse in the state of Indiana, the Indiana State Fair. The whole purpose behind the thinking of the ESA at the time was that if we don't do something for ourselves, the government will. And you can probably imagine how that could end. And so the whole idea is that we do it ourselves. We take care of each other. We be safe ourselves so that the people next to us will also be safe, but we keep an eye out for them. And we try to pass safety around so that we change the culture from the ground up. And might I also add that many of us have been off work for a long time in this industry, and coming back after 10 months or a year or longer is something we need to be careful of. We're not going to have the muscle memory that we had. So be careful as you start working. Take your time, think through the mechanics of what you're doing until you get that muscle memory back, until you're as good as you were before the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Don. That's an important point that, you know, COVID has also provided us with some opportunities, right? So we're in a place now where we can rethink the way we've done business. Can we change it before it goes back live? Soup to nuts, full throttle? No, we cannot, but we can certainly invest a lot of thought power into it. So step one, we're going to have trouble getting people back into the pipeline to go back to work. Step two, those who are coming back to work are coming back to work as though they may be new, because the instinctive, intuitive nature with which they do business has, the muscle memory, as Don has said, has gone away from them. They haven't been doing it repetitively. Therefore, even things as simple as the runner, the forklift driver, as complex as the rigger, as complex as the travel agent, all of these places are going to have a new learning curve as we get back to life. And during that learning curve, we're at a much more elevated risk exposure because we forgot, oh, shoot, I forgot to double knot that. Oh, shoot, I forgot to tie the ground in, whatever it might be. It's incumbent and imperative on all of us, especially the leaders, to provide room for this kind of, got to regain my stride. I got to regain my muscle memory. I got to regain my instinctive behaviors. And that's going to take a little bit. So we really think that part of coming out of COVID is hopefully our leaders are becoming more of the authentic leadership style, of the servant leadership style, and the recognition that, you know, if you want to survive out here, me as the leader and you as the team, we've got to look out for each other. And we've got to remember the first 6 months, first year or so, things are going to be more dangerous than they've ever been in the past. Because if it's not someone who's lost their muscle memory, then it may be a new person doing that because we're having trouble feeding the pipeline. I know here in the States, at least 30% of the workforce, most people are chucking that number around, has left the business, never to return. Those who do return or are thinking about returning or having a hard time making that decision for what you've just seen happen to your event here in New Zealand. And that is, well, I'm going to quit my full-time job that's got benefits now so I can go back to work in the live event space, get signed up, get the first paycheck in the bank, and start getting ready to pack and leave home. And then our country's back in lockdown, or that state's back in lockdown, or that event is no longer happening because the artist doesn't want to do it. So there's, in addition to the 30% of people who've left, there's some percentage of our workforce who is very concerned about coming back in early days because we don't know what's going to happen next. And so we're at an extreme risk exposure at this point in time until we find our stride again. And I think that that's global. And I think that, if I'm in a tour that's coming to New Zealand, I'm going to want to know that my New Zealand brothers and sisters have my back, because maybe I don't remember all the things I should have been doing when I walked into that venue again. So I think that that's an interesting perspective. I hope that we can have a discussion about in the Q&A coming up here in just a minute. What else? Oh, the other thing we've been working on here, kind of in separate circles, is we recognize, at least in the US, there are no benchmarks for professional designations beyond rigger and electrician. There are no professional learning tracks to take you from apprentice to journeyman X. So that's journeyman stage manager, apprentice to journeyman production manager. None of these learnings are captured. None of, there is a body of knowledge. We wrote it around safety, but there's no real body of knowledge beyond the safety designation for how to do business in this space, which we think is an interesting challenge for the industry to create. And from that body of knowledge, we also think it's imperative that the future has learning opportunities, learning tracks to get you from day one to being a leader inside the space. So COVID's brought us that too.
Can I leave you with a couple thoughts before we do our Q&A? Just a couple final thoughts. We have learned a lot over the last year about how to take care of ourselves and others, but it can really be boiled down to a few things. Wash your hands. Do this more often than you might have done before. Take basic safety training like ESAT. In the United States, you can take OSHA training, OSHA 10 or OSHA 30, but the ESAT training can be taken by anybody, anywhere, and it's relevant. And the last thing I'll tell you is that unless there's a medical reason not to, we hope that everyone will seriously consider a vaccination, not just of COVID, but also of the flu and the various versions of it. Speak to your medical provider, but please do seriously consider getting vaccinated. You're going to help us all by doing so. And we'll all be back in New Zealand. We'll have the pleasure of your company with us sooner rather than later.
I sure hope so. And about the vaccination thing, Don, I think we've recognized that flu incidents of flu are almost nil during COVID because of this lack of exposure to each other. So I think that demonstrates the power and the science behind the mask as much as what's happening now currently in the States with the vaccine, which is the only serious cases in the hospitals by and large are the unvaccinated. The vaccinated are not seeing the hospitals currently. Yeah.
Please stay safe, everyone. I think we have some Q&A coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm looking at, Vicky's coming back in. Maybe she'll guide us through that.
Yeah, I'm back. Thanks, gentlemen. That was really enlightening. We've got one question sitting here at the moment, and it's Kathy, I believe. So I think what we'll do is I'll ask the guys to make Kathy live so that she can ask that question direct. That's not come up on my screen. So if we can do that, Kathy, if you're happy to actually ask that question live of the gentleman.
Let me know if she can't do that. Oh, there she is.
Hi, Kathy.
Hey, how you doing?
Excellent.
Hi, Kathy.
Yeah, nice to see you guys. Hey, I just my question was around the need to bear in mind that people have been out for some time, and we were out in lockdown for we were out of action really for about 15 weeks by the time we'd had lockdown, and then by the time events came back online. And I distinctly remember the complaints about sore feet and work boots and fatigue that we never used to get at the end of an 8-10 hour work day, and also coming around the corner and seeing people scratching their heads going, I know how to do this, but I can't remember how. And so I'm just wondering what work you may have done with producers and production managers to make sure that they're aware of this sort of risk. After 15 months, I can't imagine the fitness levels of some of the people who potentially their only fitness outlet was actually doing load-ins and load-outs, and the fact that they're actually, potentially going to hurt themselves lifting and carrying things, but also the timeframes it's going to take to load in those shows now, given that people have to work a lot, a lot harder.
Yeah.
And obviously within our sort of industry, we know that, but do the people who are organizing the tour and booking the schedules, are you seeing that they're appreciating that there'll be a lag?
Good questions, all of it, Kathy. I think we did miss the physical aspect of the inactivity when we just teed this conversation up. We're speaking mostly about the mental aspect of, geez, I'm not doing so many things that I used to do instinctively, and now I've got to double check myself to make sure the process is right. And as you correctly pointed out, oh, geez, do I have the strength to get through the day or the stamina to get through the day? Because you're right, we are no less than 12 hours a day, and in most often 18 hours a day. And I don't think you can go from whatever your at-home COVID activity was to 18 hours a day overnight. I mean, that goes without saying, and you're right to point it out. The ESA is doing everything it's always done in this space. We're creating the language around it. We're pushing the message out on social media. We're trying to get into the hands of the decision makers, but by and large, we have been shut out from, even now 8 years into this journey. We're not getting a whole lot of managers calling us up and asking. We're not getting a whole lot of artists calling us up and asking. We're really talking into the echo chamber of our already existing community, which is good. We're looking to help each other at this point. It would be better if the managers, the agents, the artists saw the work that we were doing and saw that we were trying to do it on behalf of their own risk exposure and the artist's reputational risk as well, but they're not. And beyond us looking out for each other and beyond us, if I were to be advancing a show right now, I would be talking to my local representatives, my local promoters, and saying, hey man, how much training has your team had coming back into this? How many shows have you done? Is everybody going to be really fresh out of the box? Is this day 1 after COVID, or is this show 10 after COVID? And highlighting our concern, the artists' concern for the environment I'm coming into. And I would hope that the promoters were doing the same back towards the touring teams if we're talking about touring, or to the arena venue teams if we're talking about venue work. Most importantly, I think it's incumbent on the leaders to recognize that this is real. PTSD post-COVID is real. Fatigue is real, and to be creating an environment in which there's room for that reality to come through transition back to where we were.
Yeah, I mean, we found also that people needed time to talk to each other. So some people have been locked down by themselves, and there needed to be a little bit more time in the day to take the breaks that you needed physically, but also to go, how was it for you? And there was a lot more openness, I found, amongst crew in terms of actually what their mental health was feeling or had been feeling like, and how grateful they were to be back. That's for sure. And I guess also for you guys, more than for us, throwing in that some people will be coming back having had COVID and whatever fitness, physical stuff that comes with that. So I sort of wish you luck with all of that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, that there is this social aspect of coming back as well. I recently flew to Los Angeles from the East Coast to do a 1-song television appearance by one of the artists I work with. And it was the TV team and everyone around this event for the performance, the most gracious feeling I've had ever, I think, walking onto a set. And we, of course, were that way as well. We were all just happy to be doing something again. The whole experience being on an airplane and airport to airport, completely different story. But amongst our tribe, our community, everybody was in really great spirits. And if you take away the ability for folks to reconnect, I think you take away part of the experience that drives us to the work.
Yeah.
So again, to the leaders, we need space for that. We're not going to cost you extra money, but we need space for them.
Thanks,
Nikki, do you have another
Kathy.
question?
Yeah, we've got one more question that's come in, and we've only got a few minutes left, so we'll keep this one. But if anyone's got other questions, I'm happy to pass them on to ESA as well. But this question is, if those managers are not buying in, why do we think that is the case? And what might we be able to do to get them to get buy-in? I don't know if these are things that you've considered at your end.
Well, Don, not to take this one from you, but I think I should, right? I do think that the artists need to drive what their priority is. If the artist's risk threshold is low and they want the competencies they've enjoyed prior to COVID, and they want a healthy environment, and they want their reputational risk protected, then they need to say to their managers, find us teams who appreciate and value these things, and staff accordingly. Now, why don't managers see that? That's an existential question. I can't answer why managers don't see that. I'm lucky enough to work for one who does, but they are far and few between. It typically, managers are seeing most things that impact the bottom line as their first priority, and the health of the artist is their first priority. We've learned from COVID here in the States that the fact that we've worked in the shadows behind the scenes for our entire life, and that our industry is made up of staffing behind the scenes in the dark, and where our intention is to never be seen, that intention, that truth that we've never been seen, has cost us our ability to get protections or safety nets in place during COVID. It's been very difficult in the States for folks to be valued by the government protection programs and things of that nature that COVID caused to happen. So I don't have an easy answer to what to do about managers and artists not.
Can I suggest one thing though? Communication won't hurt. Telling people what you are feeling and your shortcomings, temporary as they might be, is always a good idea. Asking for a little more time or a little more patience is a requirement these days. Don't hesitate to do that. You won't have to do it for long. Eat well, stay hydrated, get plenty of rest, do all the normal things, and it will all come back to you, I promise.
Yeah, I think we're uniquely challenged. That's right, Don. We are uniquely challenged as a community that in most instances, there's a finite amount of time from start of the day to the audience load in. And the same things still need to occur in that finite amount of time, whether that's 2 shifts of people or 1 shift, which is the reality. We're going to be faced with the same challenges. So we do need to give consideration to how we conquer that.
Thank you. I think these are all really good things that we can continue discussing here, and maybe it's another session with you folks at some point in the future, later in the year, where we just do a single one-off session. But I'd like to say a massive thank you from ETNZ over to ESA. I hope you continue to stay safe. And just let all our people in this room know that we're jumping over to Zoom session B now, where we've got Taina Douglas talking to us around her book that she's just released called Loud. So if people want to see that session, jump over that way. I want to say a massive thank you to Jim and Don, and hopefully we'll get to talk to them again soon.
Thanks to your suppliers and sponsors for having us here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.